Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum viewers. I'm your host SM Hali, presenting another edition of Defense and Diplomacy. It has been nearly 2 weeks since the arrest of the Indian RAW terrorist commander Kalbhoshan Yadav. But India appears to be in a state of denial. How this particular arrest is going to affect Pakistan-India relations, this is what we are going to examine in today's talk. And we are honored to have in the studio none other than Makhdoom Babar, a renowned Indologist. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir.
We have with us young Fahad Humayun, who also keeps his finger on the pulse on Pakistan-India relations. Welcome to the show. Let's start the discussion with you, Makhdoom Babar. How do you view India's denial? Does it have any grounds to deny this? It's no longer an allegation. It's a very clear-cut evidence.
The denial by the Indian government is just, a traditional tactic. Whenever some country's spy is arrested in another country, or particularly in an enemy country, the country from which the spy has been sent, always they deny. In many cases, they deny of having any knowledge of the arrested person, and in some cases they deny different identities of the person. But in this case, India is, very much trapped, and they reacted so desperately, as if they were never expecting such a development. They straight away admitted that he is Mr. So-and-so, and he is a former officer of Indian Navy. Now, by admitting that, they admitted that this person was in Iran on a fake name, on a different name, on a fake passport, for which they have to make other explanations that why Kalbhoshan Yadav, son of so-and-so, was not allowed to run a business in Iran, whereas many Indians were doing business there, why he had to have a fake identity to there, and who provided him the fake identity, and whom they are asking the consular access to Kalbhoshan Yadav or to Hussain Patel. And this, even if they deny, they are completely exposed, and this is just...
But Mac, if you recall, 3 years back, I remember reading a very detailed article by you, Spiders of Balochistan, in which you had predicted exactly the same thing.
Yeah, in the Daily Mail, we have been publishing a lot of stories. This was basically our main story, that cow plan for Balochistan unleashed. Cow was, Rameshwar Nath Cow was the first head of RAW.
He was deputy director of IB, transferred by Indra to create the research and analysis wing in 1967.
He was Director General S of IB, dealing with security matters, and when Indira Gandhi asked him to prepare a plan against Pakistan, so he came up with a very comprehensive plan, and after seeing that plan, Indira Gandhi said, this is not the job of IB alone, we need to create a new intelligence cadre for that, and then RAW was created. Now, in that cow plan, first plan was disintegration of East Pakistan. That was materialized successfully in 1977 and
71.
71, and in 72, 73, they opted to go for the second phase of their cow plan, that was the disintegration of Balochistan. But at that time, I have written a book, Spiders of SPYDER, Spiders in Balochistan. That operation was stopped because the then Iranian monarch Shah Raza Pahlavi, he was very annoyed with this operation going on, and at that time India was seeking a multi-million-dollar loan from Iran, and the sister of Raza Pahlavi conveyed it to the Indians that if you will go for the Balochistan disintegration plan through RAW, King will not be ready to give you that loan. So that was shelved, but successive governments continued with it, and successive RAW leaderships continued with it, and finally in 2004 or 2003 they started moving quickly on this plan, and that was the time when people like Kalbhoshan Yadav were infiltrated and tasked to organize things across Balochistan and across Pakistan as well.
And Kalbhoshan Yadav is not a tiny operative. He is a actually a leader of this. But we'll come to it in a little while. Fahad, Humayun, you are a keen watcher of Pak-India relations. How do you watch this denial by India about this fellow being a raw agent? They've been coming up with, you know, fake excuses. They are saying that Pakistani troops or Pakistani ISI may have kidnapped Commander Kalbhoshan from Chabahar and planted him at Chaman.
Ji, Hali Saab, thank you for having me back on your show. Let me begin by saying I agree with what Babar Saab's prognosis. I think India's initial reaction seems to have been slightly unthought out, slightly all over the place. And while it may not be desperation per se, but it certainly shows an insecurity, because this is an embarrassment. You know, even during the Cold War, when Soviet spies were caught in the United States or vice versa, this would be an embarrassment for both sides, because on the face of it, both sides claim to be playing a very above the board, above the water sort of game. But here now the problem is that if you look back at where India-Pakistan relations have been sort of for the past 6 months, in the approach that New Delhi has sort of carried with it is one of having the upper hand and a certain moral high ground with which it's been able to tell Pakistan that the problems in this relationship are fundamentally because of you. Terrorism is a Pakistan-made problem. Regional instability is a Pakistan-made problem. So certainly all of that is now coming undone. That whole public messaging which India had very successfully managed, this case it had managed to present to the world. Especially now that Pakistan is taking this case and to the highest channels, to the UN, to the US, various foreign missions are being made aware, apprised of this situation, shown the testimony of Kalbhoshan Yadav. So I think what's going to happen now is India is going to have to think slightly more carefully about the response and give a slightly more structured, thought out response, because so far 2 statements have come out from the Ministry of External Affairs, and neither of them either really addresses the issue of who this person is, how he entered Pakistan on illegal an alien for all thoughts and purposes, because he didn't carry the necessary documents to be in Pakistan. And then B, like you said, he's clearly not a lone wolf operative. Operatives like this who are tasked with carrying out operations in places like Balochistan, they operate in networks, they don't operate as individuals.
In fact, if you recall, his testimony or a proper confession in the shape of a video was released by ISPR and shown to all the TV channels. And if you watch the body language of Kalbhoshan Yadav, he doesn't seem to be under duress or stress. It seems that he's voluntarily coming up with a lot of information. So you're right. He had a whole network and he was leading it.
He seems at ease, and I mean, I'm glad that video was released. For the longest time, the complaint against Pakistan has been insufficient evidence to point to active Indian involvement in Balochistan. And you will recall that there was a case of dossiers presented and handed over at various forums last year. But even with those dossiers, there was some uncertainty, lack of transparency about what was actually contained, the facts that were contained in those. But I think with this particular video testimony, there's very little. There's no 2 ways about it. I mean, this is a serious case which needs to be investigated. Now we're at the point where, my suggestion would be, India, of course, has asked for consular access to.
If you hold that thought, we will talk about, proposals in a little while. I want to draw your attention, Makhdoom Babar, to the fact that young Fahad mentioned the last 6 months. Pakistan and India did appear to be talking to each other, and then Pakistan made a very concerted effort as far as the Pathankot terrorist strike was concerned. Pakistan not only filed an FIR, it rounded up people, it had organized a joint investigation team which went and spent a week in India. So after all this is what we are going to get from India. I think it's terrible. What do you think?
Well, that was all well said. There was growing pressure on India from the global community, particularly from the US, to engage Pakistan in dialogue process, and they had to show something. They had to meet our national security advisor at Thailand, They had to send their external affairs ministers to the Heart of Asia conference, and they had to show that they are making very solid, positive steps.
And let's not forget Prime Minister
No,
Modi's
I'm coming towards that.
Okay.
And then they played their top card, and they properly organized visit of Narendra Modi along with all his officials, including National Security Advisor Ajit Kumar Doval, who is the mastermind in creating terrorism across Pakistan.
Again, in a statement, if you recall his YouTube
policy of offensive defense that he's running, and his so-called national security doctrine that is against Pakistan, against China, against all regional countries. Pakistan government was informed just 2 hours ago before the visit. But on the Indian side, it was all planned because the Prime Minister of India was visiting Afghanistan, and from there they informed that we will attend the wedding ceremony of the granddaughter of the Prime Minister, but they had brought all the dresses, all the gifts, all the bouquets. They did not bring if they had no idea while leaving New Delhi for Afghanistan. It was all pre-planned, everything was planned, and this was a cover-up to pursue what they did at Pathankot. Now this Pathankot episode, what our research indicate, this time it was not RAW job. This time it was an IB job. And that is why it had more loopholes in it, which normally the raw operations, raw dramas leave. IB worked more like in police, the way police operates. So first of all, they used a police officer, the SP of Gurdaspur, and then they operated like that. So this Pathankot episode was coming up, and for Pathankot episode they had to show the world that, see, even our Prime Minister is going all the way down to the residence of the Pakistani Prime Minister, but in the end we get Pathankot. But this time there were special blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The things went the other way around. RAW was caught with pants down. Soon after Pathankot, when they were still pursuing the Pathankot drama, but they had scripted to benefit out of that, they were still in it. In the middle of it, this monkey was arrested. It's a code name.
Yeah, it is a code name.
Now, my concern is, first, as Mr. Fahad said, that obviously they are coming out with baseless statements, with shallow statements. As you have mentioned, that one of their claims is that he was arrested from Iran. First of all, they have to tell whole world why Kalbhoshan Yadav was traveling and living in Iran on Muhammad Hussain Patel named passport. Why he was given a fake identity. He was not an ordinary Indian. He was a former Navy officer that Government of India has admitted. Why their former Navy officer, and that too from the Naval Intelligence, was given a fake passport to travel to Iran? Because our research indicates the Balochistan issue comes later. First, they were running a Navy intelligence and spy network in Iran at Chabahar to monitor Chinese naval movement. They were doing it to monitor. They were simply cheating Iran. They had given a bait of investing multi-million dollars in Chabahar port. You go to the Iranian websites, they have been asking them again and again, you are not fulfilling your commitment to invest in Iran. And they were not, because they were giving it as a bait to Iran, and under that investment promises, they were infiltrating, they were creating a network of mini RAW headquarters they were creating in Iran for all the regional countries. So this time Pakistan is not alone. China will rise up with Pakistan, and Iran, despite having cordial relations with India, this time they feel that their soil and their water have been used by India for intelligence purposes and for terrorism purposes. And this Kalbhoshan has admitted that he has been funding and arming foreign militants inside Afghanistan with the help of NDS, the Afghan intelligence. He has been, arming and funding foreigners like Uzbekistan Islamic Movement, UMI, like ETIM, East Turkestan Islamic Movement, like TTP. So this is just, why Pakistan authorities and Pakistan government is very calm and moving very cautiously, because they have all the evidences and they know this first video, confessional video, is just tip of the iceberg. He is an ocean of information and he is going to tell many things.
And he's singing like a canary. But coming back to my question which I posed to Makhdoom Babar, Pakistan bent backwards as far as Pathankot is concerned. But India has repaid us, in a terrible state of affairs.
Sure. With Pathankot, I think, Pakistan's response, and most observers of India-Pakistan relations would agree that Pakistan's response this time has been unprecedented. While Pathankot itself, initially the fear was that this might be an incident which might derail or upend the entire relationship, I think both sides showed a welcome sort of maturity in approaching. The medias of both sides certainly showed a certain amount of restraint before jumping to the usual finger pointing that we saw after Gurdaspur and Udhampur in 2015. So for all thoughts and purposes, I think both sides were moving together on the right track. Some of this has to do, of course, with the Bangkok mechanism which was set up, the NSA to NSA level contact, which I think provided a certain degree of respite to the relationship. So both sides found an avenue away from the media glare through which they could be used to engage with, discuss intelligence sharing. Even if aside from Pathankot, you'll recall that issue, the incident where the Pakistani NSA apparently telephoned his Indian counterpart and tipped him off about terrorists or militants who had infiltrated the state of Gujarat, and 3 of those operatives were then neutralized. And the Indian media, in fact, picked this up, and there was a lot of people felt that this was a positive development, that perhaps we can now talk about tangible intelligence sharing, something that was unheard of in the domain of India-Pakistan relations. But with Yadav, I think again it's sort of thrown a spanner into the works. Even with Pathankot, you will recall that the foreign secretaries were supposed to meet on the 15th or the 16th of January. Now we're in the first week of April. It's been approximately 3.5 months. It might be another 3.5 months before the foreign secretaries ever get together to discuss what was pledged at after the Heart of Asia summit.
And then Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif was expected to meet his counterpart on the sidelines of the National Security Summit in Washington, D.C.
Even that became something which was unable to, take place. So I think what the danger is now...
In fact, Nawaz Sharif Saab had to cancel his trip
because of the
heinous attack in Gulshan Iqbal Park in Lahore, which some analysts think is retaliation for arresting Kalbhoshan Yadav. Do you agree with that?
Well, perhaps, I mean, my personal take on that is slightly different. I think the Jamaat-ul-Ahrar claimed responsibility for the attack. And I think that there was, for a long time, our reluctance to go after on networks operating out of Punjab has been problematic. And this blowback was expected to come at some point. This is not the first attack to have taken place in the Punjab, and I don't think it will be the last attack until we see some definitive moves towards cleansing sanctuaries operating out of various parts of Pakistan. But to go back to your initial point, I think now the real danger for India-Pakistan relations is that we're going to get caught up in that period of stagnation which characterized the first 1.5 years of the Modi administration, when nothing really moved on the Indo-Pak front, beyond the occasional tweet from Prime Minister Modi, beyond the birthday telephone call wish. In terms of tangibles, I don't think until you see direct tangible progress from either from Pathankot or this Yadav arrest, it's going to be difficult to predict any forward movement on the India-Pakistan front. This is also problematic because I believe in October or November, Prime Minister Modi is expected to visit for the SAARC summit.
Yeah.
But as we know now, and I think this has become a defining feature of Prime Minister Modi's foreign policy leadership style, he likes to associate his trips with tangible outcomes. And with Pakistan, there's little to show to his own domestic constituency in India of having made real gains or real progress with India, unless Pakistan can show for its side some forward movement on some of the issues which India has an issue with. So now the danger is that that might just turn into again another display of symmetry without any real bilateral breakthrough for India-Pakistan.
Okay. So, Makhdoom Babar, let's talk about the Joint Investigation Team, the JIT's visit to India. It has come back and it faced a lot of impediments. So, I would like you to please apprise our viewers on this.
First of all, I would say it's always good to see youngsters like Fahad being very positive about the affairs in the world, but at the same time they need to remember, just he has mentioned that he, in his personal opinion, he thinks it's not RAW or anything but Tanzim ul-Ahrar. At the same time, he has to keep in mind who is financing Tanzim ul-Ahrar. What is Tanzim ul-Ahrar? Is it something like Jamaat Islami or something like other party who are running on donation? Are they having any following in Pakistani society? There is somebody who is funding them. There is somebody who is tasking them. And you don't have to forget the words of Indian Defence Minister who said, we will teach them a lesson in a way far more painful, and when and how, that we will decide, but we have a plan for it.
In fact, the words he used was कि कांटा निकालने के लिए कांटा चुभोना पड़ता है, and what he meant was that we'll fight terror with terror.
With terror, and then he said, it is planned, but time and venue, it will be us to select. So that was the time and venue for one of those action, because at that time many few people know the press conference which was held later by DG ISPR was supposed to held on Sunday. It was cancelled earlier, but to sabotage that conference, the Gulshan-e-Iqbal terror attack and pushing their pawn inside some religious circles, in sectarian circles in Pakistan, a situation was created here. But they did not know at New Delhi that that press conference has been postponed and it will be taken out later. That was to be held at 3:30 on Sunday when that bomb
exactly the same time.
Attacked. And
let's come back to
Yadav has also confessed that RAW is funding Tanzim ul-Ahrar, it is funding TTP, it is funding LJ and 4 or 5 other organizations.
And he talked about Baloch Liberation
BSO. So there is a list that he has tracked. So our youngsters should keep all the things in mind while making analysis of the current situation. This
JIT.
With the JIT, another thing that has been raised, national...
If you permit, I have to take a short break. We'll pick up the thread right from here. Viewers, stay tuned. We'll just be back. Welcome back, viewers. Before we went on the break, we were discussing about the arrest of Kalbhoshan Yadav and its impact on Indo-Pak relations. Picking up the thread from where we left, Makhdoom Babar, you were going to tell our viewers about the joint investigation team that visited India and Pathankot.
A joint investigation team, it was discussed between Pakistan's National Security Advisor and Indian National Security Advisor to form such a mechanism where they can have a joint probe, but unfortunately the things are completely changed now. Now, Pakistan has a National Security Advisor, but after Kalbhoshan's statements, Ajit Kumar Doval has proved out to be National Terrorism Advisor. So it's really a big problem for Pakistan to hold talks. Pakistan National Security Advisor will be holding talks with India's National Terrorism Advisor. This is another dilemma for Pakistan for going further in talks with India. Pathankot JIT went there and they were just given, gimmicks and dramas. They were not given access to the FIR. That is the primary document for any probe. That is the actually first information about any criminal incident. They were not given access to the Superintendent of Police, who was the first witness or first victim of Pathankot incident, whose car was snatched to reach there. To many of their questions, they were not given answers by National Investigation Agency NIA officials. When they asked about how they collected the information, the data about the phones and everything that belonged to the so-called terrorists. They were told, we got it from ISPs, internet service providers, not through any intelligence sources, not through any government sources. Then they were asked as how many were the terrorists. They said, we don't know. Not even the exact number of terrorists was given to the Pakistani team, and when it was taken to the Pathankot air base, they created a new entry gate for them. I wonder why they did not created a new Pathankot air base for them and would have made it like a stage for their liking. And now after this,
And the whole visit to the Pathankot base was limited to 55 minutes, which was just a walkthrough, probably a cosmetic.
it was a sightseeing trip. It was not an investigation trip. They were given a sightseeing trip of the Pathankot visit through new gate, through new roads, through new routes, and they were not taken to the places from where they could have shown that if this is the place where the terrorists entered from, this is the place they operated, this is the place where they killed. They were just given a quick sightseeing trip, and now they want that their team should come to Pakistan and Pakistan should provide. What have you provided to Pakistani team that you want your team to send here? Pakistan government has welcomed and this, but basically now they want to have access to such militants in Pakistan that are paid by RAW and are harbored by RAW for last many years. Now, to avenge this Yadav episode, they want to again use Pathankot drama, and they want to portray it that since Pakistan is not cooperating, since Pakistan is not giving us access to those people that we want to interview, so the talks cannot go on.
So, Fahad, how do you view this visit by the JIT? And also remember that one of the Muslim inspectors who was investigating into the Pathankot thing, Tanzil Ahmed, has been brutally murdered, and his wife is seriously sick, also injured, and they were returning from a wedding ceremony or something. And this has been a very dastardly attack. How do you look at it?
I think today's news was that the National Investigation Agency in India itself has declared that the attack on Tanzil Ahmed was a planned attack. And it's obviously very disconcerting and something which Pakistan should bring up diplomatically. And the reason why Pakistan should bring it up is because India itself is treating this Pathankot issue as a transnational criminal incident, not just, it doesn't fall just under domestic jurisdiction. And obviously it raises more questions than it answers as who was behind this attempt on Tanzil Ahmed's life. And did he obviously, carry information which might be harmful to some quarters. So there needs to be a probe. And the positive thing, though, is that I think the Indian media is reporting this, and I don't think this is going to die down very quickly. With regard to the joint investigation team, a couple of thoughts come to mind, if you will allow. The first is that I think it's unprecedented for a Pakistani team to be given access to an Indian military base of this sort, quite a significantly large base in Punjab. And I think even post Mumbai, you didn't see joint counter-terror cooperation taking place on this scale as we have seen take place in the aftermath of Pathankot. Having said that, I don't think the motive of the JIT team to visit Pathankot airbase was really to collect hard evidence. The reason why I say this is because before, what has to happen is for a court in Pakistan to issue a letter rogatory to India, which then makes any evidence collected in India by Pakistani investigators admissible in Pakistani courts. When that letter was never issued, it doesn't seem as if there was a long-term plan to go and collect evidence and bring it back and for this case to be followed up independently in Pakistan. My own assessment on this is I think the idea was to take Pakistani investigators, show this to the international world that India is cooperating, showing Pakistan its, a portion of its airbase, and build some pressure, convert this into a lever of some sort and apply some pressure on Pakistan to take more definitive action against Masood Azhar, who up till now, as you know, is only in protective custody. And I think in India, the big question post his arrest or his detainment has been to find out the exact nature, the exact status of his detention.
Okay.
Is it a long-term sort of arrangement,
But
or is he going to be prosecuted?
I'd like to
So-
talk about actually the implications of the Kalbhoshan Yadav's arrest on the Pak-India relations. But before that, I want to draw your attention to a news item which appeared in one of the dailies. Although the JIT is yet to submit its report formally, but it appears that they have concluded that the Pathankot attack was a false flag operation orchestrated by India itself.
Well, again, I think they didn't have enough evidence to draw any logical conclusion other than that from. I believe other than DNA samples, they weren't really given any tangible proof beyond, to draw a direct link between, say, Pakistani handlers and what happened at Pathankot. Again, this brings us back to the Narendra Modi government style of dealing with Pakistan. And I think so far the focus has been on optics rather than outcomes. With optics, it makes a big deal of sort of live broadcasting the image of Pakistani investigators walking into Pathankot, make headlines that India has invited for the first time, India is extending its hand, India is not jumping the gun, right? So it creates a sort of favorable environment which gives India a strategic
tangible
advantage. But like you've said, there's no tangible outcome from that, because in my opinion, this is a flawed policy on India's part, because unless India can show that Prime Minister Modi's visit to Pakistan is actually showing dividends, and right, there's some return on investment. The BJP has now invested capital on engaging with Pakistan and making this relationship work. Unless they can show they have something to show for that, they will continue to come under fire from the Congress and the AAP domestically.
Right. So, Makhdoom Babar, your thoughts on the implications of Kalbhoshan Yadav's arrest on Pak-India relations?
Well, first of all, as Fahad said, that it was unprecedented for Pakistan officials, investigating officials, to have access to Pathankot air base. It reminds me that Pathankot air base is very well known to Pakistani defense officials, especially the Pakistan Air Force officials, after inhaling 20 to 23 jets of Indian Air Force right at Pathankot.
6 September 1965, and one of the officers who was part of that strike was one of your own relatives, if I
exactly
remember, then Flight Lieutenant Samir Khan, Sitare Jurat.
Exactly. And so that was not, and then he said that they were shown walking into the Pathankot air base, but through a fake gate again. The thing is this, that forget about what letter courts had to give, or what letter was not given, or what letter is given. Why the joint investigation team was invited to India? Why India said that, okay, come and help us. Earlier, if you remember, after Mumbai attacks, they were saying, send General Pasha, send ISI chief to tell us, to help us, to assist us in Mumbai attack. Okay, if you are inviting a team, you want them to help you collect evidence to further investigate back home.
Especially when we have bent backwards.
Yeah.
You see, filing an FIR and also investigating, arresting a few people.
If you are not showing them the crime scenes, if you are not sharing any document with them, forget about the visit of the base, but you are not sharing anything with them, how do you expect them to work
But kindly
on that?
talk about the implications of
Kalbhoshan's
arrest.
Kalbhoshan's arrest is that, as Mr. Fahad has been saying, as you have been saying, that India has been asking not enough sufficient, enough evidence for this thing, or not enough for. But the Kalbhoshan's arrest is the mother of all evidences. Now, I was saying it in a lighter note, but very seriously I am telling you that Pakistan is also under pressure to move forward with India on talks, on dialogue, but at the same time they see that the person with whom they have to talk, Ajit Kumar Doval, the person with whom they have to talk at Defence Minister, who are they actually? The Kalbhoshan statement, in which he says that he has been getting direct instructions from RAW chief Rajendra Khanna, that he has been holding meeting with Ajit Doval, and that the whole plan was by Ajit Doval, and Pakistan has to hold talks. Now this is time that Pakistan should say that talks and terrorism cannot go together. First they have to admit and they have to pull out their terrorist networks against Pakistan to prove their sincerity for holding any talks. Now it's not Indian media all over the world, it's not Indian leaders all over the world is now knowing everything. If Indians say go out, right, it's daytime, and they say that it's night, and they want that whole world should believe it's night. It can't be like that. If it is day, they will say night, world will say that they are lying. This is time for our leadership. Actually, in past, the leadership, political leaderships have always been trying to be cordial, be softer with India, whereas the intelligence agencies, the security agencies, they have digging out the proofs of Indian involvement in terrorism and handing it over to political governments. But those matters were, whether it was Musharraf government, it was the PPP government, or it was whatever governments, political governments were, they did not take up those issues at a higher level, just in a bid to have cordial relations with India. But this time, this is a human being, and that human being is talking, and talking loud and fast. How can they be silent on this? There has to be, some conclusion to that.
Right. So Fahad, let's now come to your opinion on the implications, and what should Pakistan be doing to present this very tangible evidence to the world to show the real face of India?
Right. I think with Kalbhoshan Yadav, Pakistan now has an opportunity to create a stronger case than that was presented last year in the form of those dossiers. We've already begun by that video that was produced in which he makes his televised confession, which I think is a good starting point. I also think Pakistan now has an opportunity here to dictate some of the terms of the agenda, dialogue agenda with New Delhi. So far, it's always been New Delhi telling Pakistan that this is what this is a list of subjects that we want to discuss with you, and we'll discuss them. We'll discuss each issue when we feel like this is the best time to discuss it. So, for instance, the rehyphenation of talks and terror, of course, is something that happened by default after Pathankot. I think this is an opportunity for Pakistan to say, no, terrorism actually works both ways. This is a two-way street. And not just terrorism, but also extremism, because you've seen with this whole debate on the saffronization of India, the emergence of new forms of Hindutva extremism in India are a threat to Pakistani artists and Pakistani sportsmen who go to the other side. So I think terrorism and extremism, Pakistan needs to now sit down and decide how it wants to raise these issues with New Delhi, diplomatically, or in a sort of multilateral setting, because I know that the issue of Yadav's arrest has already been raised with all the foreign missions operating in Pakistan and abroad also. I think one avenue of recourse which is available to Pakistan is that the Ministry of External Affairs has requested for consular access to Yadav. A lot of people have said that they should not be granted at any cost. But my own take on this is slightly different. I believe that if supervised access is granted, not just to the MEA, but call in international observers, call in, say, people from the ICJ to sit in and ask Yadav one-on-one questions, because there are questions here which Pakistan needs. Like you said in the beginning, he wasn't the only one operating. If he is part of a network, then this is the time for this to be exposed. The danger of this happening is that if this is relegated to the channels of the NSA mechanism, for instance, and the Yadav's arrest is discussed only as a function of the back channel, then in the public domain, we'll never really find out what he was doing in Iran, what he was doing in Balochistan, and it'll sort of just, turn into one of those history anecdotes that we never really got to the bottom to. But I think this is a chance of really raising the issue of Indian involvement in Balochistan and creating a much stronger case, and then leveraging that case when we sit across opposite India on the negotiating table.
Right. So viewers, with that we wind up this debate. It has been very interesting because both our participants are very clear in their thoughts that for the first time, Pakistan does not hold just the smoking gun which has been found implicating Indian and especially the Indian Research and Analysis Wing, its dreaded RAW, operating in Pakistan, trying to destabilize Pakistan, trying to destabilize Balochistan, trying to sabotage the China-Pakistan economic corridor and working against the detriment of the regional interest. We have a case, and it is not any circumstantial evidence, but tangible evidence which we can present to the International Court of Justice, which we can present to the United Nations, and which we can present to the entire world and expose India, as well as dictate the future course of action and the diplomatic action which has to be taken place in the shape of dialogue, and Pakistan is no longer the underdog. I'd like to thank you, Makhdoom Babar. I'd like to thank you, Fahad Humayun. It was a pleasure listening to both of you. Viewers, keep watching us. Hope to see you in the next program, inshallah. Allah Hafiz.